So I don't think I've ever seen a standalone piece of gym equipment with this much dedicated or potential functionality packed into a single machine. This is what I consider the fully loaded Freak Athlete Hyper Pro, and it's got a leg developer and GHD attachment add-ons, which all together boast the ability to basically transform into 9 dedicated machines, all using a singular, adjustable, and transformative footprint. This Hyper Pro allows you to use it as a GHD and a reverse hyper, additionally perform things like decline sit-ups, back extensions, leg curls, hip thrusts, GHD sit-ups, and even more considering they have an additional upper body kit and some future attachments and upgrades in the pipeline planned for this machine. And best of all, it's all available for a very reasonable price compared to the equivalent standalone machine alternatives. So let's check it out. Hey guys, this is Michael with the Jungle Gym Reviews. Today we're reviewing the Freak Athlete Hyper Pro, and this is one of the machines that I think could be the best lower body option for home gyms, just due to the sheer amount of exercises you can do, all in a relatively compact singular footprint, especially because this machine stores vertically and upright, and it can be rolled into a corner when not in use. I do also want to note that this review also includes the coverage of 2 separate additional add-ons, including this GHD attachment pictured here, and the leg developer, which I'll show shortly. And from my experience, these both seem to be very worthwhile, but you can decide that for yourself after this review. Before I get into the review, if you could quickly hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, it will help us continue to grow the channel. Make sure you get notified when we post our weekly review videos throughout the rest of 2025. And if you're interested in purchasing this machine after the review, please check out the affiliate link in the description below. So first, I do want to mention that my perspective on this type of machine may be different from other reviewers, since I've only trained primarily in a bodybuilding or hypertrophy style for a good handful of years. And a good handful of these exercises I've really only done a few times before using this machine, especially in a commercial setting, like a reverse hyper or a GHD, which I consider a little more sports-specific type movements or machines. So feel free to either roast me or go easy in pointing out how I'm not doing them optimally. Why I really want to mention this background though is because after 6 months of using it now, I have found a way to incorporate this machine into my training and will continue to incorporate it into my training. I say this so that others who might be in a similar boat like I was initially and think, I don't do half of these exercises, so I don't care and I don't need to use this machine, I would suggest strongly you at least watch the rest of the video and consider my final thoughts coming from someone with a similar original perspective, because knowing what I know now, I really appreciate having more lower body variety in my training and overcoming the learning curve associated with all these angles and knobs and pads adjustments and such. So the first exercise in this machine is what I would consider the base functionality of the Hyper Pro, meaning if you order this unit without the additional attachments like this GHD pad here and that leg developer again as mentioned, you'll still be able to do things like the good old-fashioned Nordic curl. The Nordic curl is a good hamstring accessory option, and to do a true Nordic curl on a flat surface is actually really hard. What's cool about the Hyper Pro here is this allows you to do regressions, meaning you can actually start at a higher angle than flat, making it easier for you to learn the movement, progressively overload, get stronger. And on the flip side, if you're really strong and can do true Nordic curls, you can do progressions and go beyond just flat. This is cool because then you don't need to add weight right away, just due to the increase in difficulty due to the downwards facing angle and gravity. When doing the Nordic curl, I personally stick to the higher angle regressions, and it's very, very easy to lock in your angles with this foot pad and pop pin. The padding density for the foot pad and actually overall for the machine is very comfortable and supportive, so it doesn't hurt your knees while doing a Nordic curl, and the texture of the padding itself is very soft, smooth, but not actually slippery. Because it is smooth, it does show a little bit more sweat or skin marks as you might see here, but the good trade-off is it doesn't pinch or grab your skin like a grippy bench press pad would, for example. The back extension is the next exercise you can do, and it feels very solid and stable, and the setup is very straightforward. You simply just remove that rectangular main pad, which comes by loosening the yellow knob on the front, which holds the pad in place, and there's no pop pins or anything else you need to do from there. Then you can lower or raise the actual height of these thigh pads that are underneath here because they're mounted to this main adjustment shaft. And then with a red pop pin, you can set it however the desired length is for that movement. Secondly, you can adjust the spacing for the thigh pads left to right just by loosening the 2 knobs that are underneath each one. They allow them to slide freely and accommodate you, your body size, your shape, and anatomy. The back extension movement itself feels great because the padding is actually more comfortable than a commercial version I've used in the past. The different angle adjustments on the Hyper Pro also make it easier to dial in the exact angle preference and progressively overload it without having to use weight till you get to the higher settings. Also, doing these and then pretty much any of the general movements on the machine feel great because this machine is extremely solid front to back and left to right because of the wide frame and feet. Now, going from the back extension, another few adjustments, you can then flip the orientation of the front to back angle and put the seat back for decline sit-ups. These are a little awkward at first to get in because your body weight is actually sliding you down and you need to grip on these knurled base plate handles back here just to hold on while you try to get your feet in between those rollers, all while pulling the foot holder pop pin in to lock your feet. But once you do all that, you can perform decline sit-ups with relative ease. I do want to mention though, it doesn't feel as good as a dedicated decline ab bench that supports the back of your knees and the front of your ankles in tandem, but this still gets the job done. You just have to know how to balance your weight distribution and how to hinge at the hips and your knees to do a sit-up because your ankles are really the only thing that are being supported here. Now, just like with decline sit-ups and a couple front to back adjustments later, you take that leg pad from the top of the Hyper Pro, move it to the front of the machine, bring this little tube up on the bottom here, lock it in with a detent pin, and then slide the leg brace to the height of your choosing. And bam, this thing is now set up for support your back for hip thrusts. This is really nice because if you've ever done hip thrusts from a bench or similar, you know that both the height of the bench and the fact it has square edges make it kind of less than ideal. Again, the smoothness of the padding and the fact that it's round actually make it super nice, and the only real downside is you need to make sure you orient the bench and the bar however you want in the room to make sure you don't hit anything. So those prior exercises I mentioned are the main ones you can do if you buy the Hyper Pro machine by itself. If you buy this $220 GHD attachment, you get 3 more dedicated exercises you can do. The first 2 being the glute ham raise traditional and then GHD sit-ups like you can perform on a dedicated GHD machine. To do either of these exercises, you take off the rectangular made pad like I have here, put on your GHD pad, adjust the length of the main shaft, put the pad in the pretty much typically the last hole, and in order to get up into position, the Hyper Pro actually has these 2 little knurled what looks like handles, but are actually step ups, so you can step up and down. They're also magnetic, so when you store them, you can lock them up and they won't be in your way. I find I usually just leave them down and they don't bother me or get in any of the way of my movements. As I mentioned before, I haven't really used a GHD before, so don't really have a good frame of reference for how it compares to other machines personally, but I can say it feels comfortably enough and it definitely works my posterior chain. This is one exercise though I probably won't do as often going forward since I have more preferred exercises to work those same muscle groups. This is just like a personal preference, not a function of the machine being bad. This exercise just really isn't high on my list of priorities to do for my workouts because it's a little more sport specific. The GHD sit-up, however, is more up my alley and it's totally like a traditional sit-up, except you can hyperextend your torso backwards, which feels kind of weird at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's just another solid ab exercise to cycle into your training as desired. The other functionality you gain with the GHD pad is the reverse hyper. I typically lower the back end of the machine by just an adjustment or two, which puts me at a better and slightly downward torso angle, gives me a little bit more clearance for my feet on the floor. Speaking of that clearance, I'm 6'2". I had a friend who's 6'3" try this movement also, and neither of us have any issues. We both have about 2 to 3 inches to spare before our feet would hit the floor or this frame assembly here. When you do the reverse hyper, you can grab onto the base plate, which again has these narrow knurled handles, both the sides and the top. You grab the sides for this movement. These were also a movement reverse hyper. I was a little less familiar with it first, but I'm actually now really happy I have the ability to do them, even if my form is still a work in progress. These are actually really great for my low back and glutes, and since you can only do them body weight on here, it requires you to do higher reps per set, which gives you a really nice pump to those areas. I've actually found myself even using this on leg day as a warm-up to get my heart going and my legs, glutes, and posterior chain primed for squats. Moving to the next exercise is simple. As you grab that leg developer attachment, simply just line it up and lock it in place to the front of the frame here. Since the leg developer is only attached to the frame and not the seat, you can adjust the specific front to back angle still of the Hyper Pro to what feels best for you for each exercise. For me, that ends up being about a 15-degree front angle setting for the leg extensions, which you'll see is actually not part of the pop pin selection, but rather this little lock or catch at the bottom of the machine. And the back I keep down at 0 degrees in the fully locked position. Freak Athlete also includes these handle extensions with the leg developer, which simply pop into the existing handle locations. They're geared specifically for use with leg extensions so that you can find the right front to back and height grip for you, since the built-in ones here aren't exactly in the right ergonomic position to grab the most comfortably. I personally find myself gripping about somewhere halfway down those handle extensions in most situations. Just like the rest of the Hyper Pro, the padding is the same material and density on those leg rollers. One thing you will notice when you do leg extensions though, is that the leg curl bracket looks like it will come and hit you in the face, but I promise it won't. However, you can remove that hamstring curl bracket leg holder roller if it makes you feel better. It just has a little detent pin on the side. I leave mine in since again, it doesn't actually interfere with anything or won't hit you. And for me, it's nice to be able to superset and go back and forth between two exercises. The resistance curve is another big hot topic, and for this leg extension, it's very even throughout the movement, although I find it a little bit too even in my opinion, because it's just as hard at the top as is at the bottom for leg extensions, which feels okay, but comparing it to standalone options I own or have used in the past, like the commercial one I used to have, you want it slightly easier at the top so that you can hold that peak contraction just a little bit longer with your quads. Fortunately, you could fix this by just biasing the movement easily by slightly leaning back, which improves both the stretch on your quads and makes the top of the movement slightly easier. So then it feels fantastic for just an attachment. Speaking to the lying leg curls, the resistance curve feels ideal for this exercise because there's that other foot or so of travel at the very top end of the movement compared to the leg extension, which stops about parallel to the floor. Now here's where the resistance curve does get a bit easier at the top and it feels much more natural right away. Also, the angle adjustments in the machine are great because you can actually swap easily for leg extension and leg curls. For me, I like to put it up one more setting higher to 20 degrees rather than the 15 for leg curls. And this mimics a traditional lying leg extension machine where your hips are in line or a little bit higher than the knee pad, which really just lets you drive and focus on your hamstrings while giving a nice stretch at the bottom of the movement. The only downside for lying leg curls is that the leg holder pad near the back of the machine here is kind of sitting right in front of your face. So if you're tall like me, you simply have to just take it off, leave it at the side, but then you have this square tube still plopped right in the middle. It's mildly annoying, but I will happily make that trade-off since all you have to do is just grab onto the foot plate to hold it and keep your head tucked to either side, and the movement itself feels very natural besides the head movement. Quickly to mention the price of all of these, please check their website before you order, and I'll link that in the description below for the most up-to-date pricing. As of the time of filming this video, the price of the Hyper Pro without the attachments that I'm showing here is currently listed at $9.99 on their website. This GHD pad attachment is $220, but you can add it to the bundle right now for $170. And similarly, the leg developer is $350, but for $300 or so, you can add it again all in a bundle with the main unit plus the GHD pad. So just know they'll likely have a package sale or discounts where you can get the attachments cheaper when you buy everything together. As far as a learning curve, there definitely is one here, and I honestly put off integrating this machine daily into my training as I had originally planned, just due to the thought process that was involved in setting it up and adjusting for each specific exercise and all the knobs and tightening and angles. I mean, I don't want to sugarcoat it here. You do have to spend some time learning the different adjustments, angles associated with each exercise. There's a front angle, back angle, leg pad, height and width, adjustments, taking on and off the main pad, the GHD pad, the leg developer on and off, storing the leg developer, putting on weight plates, taking them off, etc. It does take a lot of time and a decent amount of thinking at first, although referencing their website was definitely my friend. I can do it, so you can do it too. And 6 months later, I don't have to think about it nearly at all, and setting up for any exercise is pretty much second nature. As you can see here, again, there's a lot of knobs and handles and stuff. They did a good job at trying to color code them from their past versions. I found it a little daunting, however, and I don't really pay attention to the colors even because I now just understand which knob location does what. So while I appreciate them trying to color code them, the fact there's 743 knobs, it doesn't personally matter to me what the colors are because I'm never going to remember them by color alone. Also, the topic of adjustment complexity, I did want to mention the different angle adjustments on the front to back. The front goes up by increments of 5 degrees, 5, 10, 15, using that little lock and latch on the bottom of the frame, and then 20 through 45 degrees for the front in 5-degree increments with the front pop pin. The rear end starts at 0 degrees, jumps up to 20 degrees, and then in 5-degree increments, 20 through 45. So overall, this machine really grew on me the more and more I used it and became familiar with how to use it. If you asked my opinion if I'd keep this machine about 1 month into owning it, I would have told you, no, probably not, it's okay. But now 6 months later, my answers have wildly shifted. So I think you really need to give it time and due diligence as well to get accustomed to the adjustments and the different movements if you aren't already. I now think this machine is a really good value when you consider just the sheer amount of things you can do in one footprint, all for the price of a singular standalone equivalent machine. I really don't think you can find another lower body oriented machine that allows you to do everything this one does while not being incredibly expensive, taking up space, and not to mention this one can be stored upright and tucked into a corner again when not in use. So honestly, it's a no-brainer for people who care about or want to add more dedicated lower body exercise options to their spaces. I've even had a few friends come out of the woodwork saying, "Hey man, can I buy that? Hey man, can I buy that? Hey, when you're done, can I buy it?" No, I'm gonna keep it. Now, there is one main thing I found others should consider, and that is less a function of how well the machine works and more so the trade-off of using this multifunctional all-in-one type machine. Besides that learning curve, which again you will eventually master, is the storage when not in use. Storing it upright takes time to store it, and setting it up spends about 30 seconds to a minute, and that can honestly get annoying if you're doing that every day or every workout. That time, plus the additional space you need to go store the leg developer attachment somewhere, which actually pretty much takes up the same amount of square floor space as the machine itself. I just know Freak Athlete and I know their products. I know they're gonna probably add more attachments and capability to this machine in the future, which again, absolutely fantastic. I applaud them. I'm all for that, by the way. But I can't help but think in the back of my mind, I'm going to quickly run out of room for this machine, so all the pads, the attachments, whatever it is. And I assume pretty much everyone, though, would rather have the option to have more capability and learn to live with this storage situation. But that's just my 2 cents. Speaking to that storage, the overall size when stored upright is only about 23 by 22 inches, or pretty much 2 by 2 feet. When it's set up on the ground, like here, it's about 65 inches long by 23 inches wide. And when you add that leg developer attachment, 23 inches wide by now 84 inches long. The last thing I also want to mention is they also sell a very cheap upper body kit add-on, which includes an eye bolt to attach to the leg developer, some D-handles, extension strap, and some carabiners. All this pretty much allows you to use the leg developer as a weight loading horn for any upper body movements you can think of to do creatively on here. Typically, that's pulling sort of movements just due to the physics of the machine. I'll be honest, since I'm spoiled with my free weights and cable machines, I really haven't used more than a handful of times. But if you don't have a good way to do upper body movements at home, this is another cheap $30 or so option that you can add. I actually am very surprised it feels much better than I expected. But again, I'm not personally in the whole get this machine out of vertical storage, put it down, add on the leg developer, throw on these handles just to do some rows compared to easily grabbing dumbbells or just going to use a functional trainer I have. The other thing I did want to showcase was an unreleased but coming soon add-on option to the leg developer, which adds a fixed bracket, some pulleys, and a cable for you to attach a weight stack to if you have one nearby. This way you can do cable-driven leg extension and leg curls. It feels good, it's smooth, but I think I still prefer the plate-loaded version because the ability to alter the strength curve with your torso positioning rather than this consistent strength curve, especially for leg extensions throughout the whole range of motion. But that just might be my personal preference. And again, I really appreciate them thinking of users who want to have asked for this functionality and already have this machine. So guys, that's it for this review for the Freak Athlete Hyper Pro. As always, if you have any questions, please comment down below. I'll be happy to answer or at least try. Thank you for tuning into the Jungle Gym Reviews. We'll see you next time. Take it easy. Peace.